The polished marble floors of the Grand Oak Hotel reflected the chaos unfolding in its lobby like a distorted mirror. Evelyn Kensington's shrill voice cut through the murmurs of the crowd, her diamond bracelet catching the light as she yanked Naomi Carter's wrist. Security. This woman clearly doesn't belong here. Evelyn sneered, her designer clutch swinging violently. These people always think they can waltz in anywhere. Naomi's dark skin burned under the grip, but her posture remained rigid. The air smelled of expensive perfume and judgment. A cluster of executives paused their conversations, iPhones already raised not to help, but to capture the spectacle. One man in a tailored suit chuckled to his companion. Maybe she's here to refill the minibars. Evelyn's lips curled. The service entrance is where you belong, honey. Noah. Naomi's fingers twitched toward her briefcase, where her phone vibrated incessantly, messages from her legal team. Her investors, the very board members now watching her humiliation unfold. The irony was almost poetic. The woman accusing her of trespassing had no idea she was standing in the way of a $20 million deal. The lobby's massive digital display flashed, "Keynote address 6 minutes." Evelyn tightened her grip, her acrylic nails, leaving crescent moons on Naomi's skin. "Let go," Naomi said, her voice low but razor-sharp. "Or what?" Evelyn scoffed, turning to the crowd. "See, this is why we need tighter vetting." Just then, the hotel manager, a balding man with the weary eyes of someone who'd spent decades appeasing the wealthy, scurried over. "Everything all right, Ms. Kensington?" His tone oozed sycophancy. "This person," Evelyn spat, "is trying to sneak into the summit." Naomi reached into her leather portfolio, withdrawing an invitation printed on thick pearl-white stock, embossed with the event's gold crest. The manager barely glanced at it. "We'll need to verify this," he muttered. "Verify what?" A new voice rang out, sharp, amused. It belonged to Lydia Cho, founder of Silicon Valley's fastest-growing AI startup, who'd been observing from the espresso bar. She strode forward, heels clicking like a metronome of disdain. "Those invites came from my office. They're identical." Evelyn's face flickered just for a second with something like panic. Then came the twist no one expected. Lydia pulled out her phone, tapped the screen, and the hotel's display suddenly changed. A video played Evelyn 3 hours earlier, slipping a stack of counterfeit invites into her Birkin bag. The crowd gasped. Naomi allowed herself a small, cold smile. "Funny," she said, straightening her blazer. "I was here to clean something up. Just not the bathrooms." The lobby erupted in whispers, as Evelyn's perfect facade cracked like thin ice. Lydia Cho's revelation about the counterfeit invitations sent a ripple through the crowd, but Evelyn Kensington wasn't done fighting. "This is ridiculous," she spat, clutching her phone like a lifeline. "I don't care what she says, this woman doesn't belong here." The venom in her voice was sharp enough to cut glass. Naomi Carter stood perfectly still, her expression unreadable, but her grip on her briefcase tightened. The lobby's tension was so thick you could taste it, metallic like blood or bad decisions. Then came the twist no one saw coming. A young bellhop, barely out of his teens and wearing a name tag that read Miguel, stepped forward. His hands shook as he held up his own phone screen, tilted toward the crowd. "Ma'am," he said, voice cracking just once before steadying. "You dropped this earlier." The video played clearly, Evelyn 20 minutes before slipping a crisp $100 bill into the concierge's palm with a whispered, "Make sure she doesn't get past the front desk." The room erupted. Evelyn's face drained of color. That's edited," she stammered, but the damage was done. Even the hotel manager, Robert Caldwell, took a step back, his loyalty crumbling like stale bread. Marcus Thompson, the venture capitalist, let out a dry laugh. "Funny how the random people you're so worried about keep turning out to be the ones with receipts." Naomi finally moved, stepping forward with the quiet authority of someone who'd had enough. "Call the police, Evelyn," she said, her voice calm but edged with steel. I'd love to explain to them how trespassing works, when you're the one falsifying documents and bribing staff. She tapped her briefcase. And while we're at it, let's discuss defamation. My lawyers have been very interested in this conversation. Evelyn's phone slipped from her fingers, clattering against the marble. The crowd's murmurs turned into a low roar, phone still recording. But now, the lens had shifted no longer on Naomi, but on Evelyn's unraveling. Then the final blow. The elevator dinged softly, and out stepped Daniel Reeves, the CEO of the very company hosting the summit. He took in the scene with a single glance, his expression darkening. "Naomi," he said, striding forward. "I've been looking everywhere for you. The board's waiting." He turned to Evelyn, his voice dropping to a dangerous quiet. "And you. Security's already escorting your real invite out of the building." The silence that followed was sweeter than any victory speech. Naomi didn't smile. She didn't have to. The way Evelyn's empire of arrogance crumbled in real time was poetry enough. Naomi watched as Officer Martinez's expression shifted from weary professionalism to something harder. The air in the lobby crackled, every breath, every whisper amplified. Evelyn's last question had crossed a line even the cops couldn't ignore. Then the twist. A sharp gasp cut through the tension. One of the silent executives behind Evelyn, a silver-haired man in a Brioni suit, suddenly paled. He was staring at his phone, then at Naomi, then back at his screen. "Oh my God," he muttered too loud. The others in his circle turned confused, until he held up his phone. A breaking news alert blared across the screen. TechFlow names Naomi Carter as new CEO, youngest in company history. The room froze. Naomi finally let her lips curve just slightly as she reached into her briefcase and pulled out the VIP badge she'd been holding back. It swung from her fingers, catching the light CEO TechFlow Innovations etched in bold letters. "Officer," she said, voice smooth as polished steel, "I believe this might clarify things." Evelyn made a sound like a deflating balloon. The executives who'd stood behind her now edged away, their phones dropping to their sides. The silver-haired man looked like he might vomit. Officer Chen didn't bother hiding his smirk. "Ma'am," he said to Evelyn, "you might want to reconsider your definition of who belongs where." But Naomi wasn't done. She turned to the crowd, her gaze sweeping over every raised phone, every stunned face. "Since we're all here," she said, loud enough for every recording device to catch, "let me make my first official announcement as CEO. TechFlow's diversity audit starts today. And Evelyn," she tilted her head, "your company's contract with us, consider it terminated." The lobby erupted not in whispers this time, but in outright chaos. Reporters who'd been covering the summit rushed forward. Evelyn's supporters scattered like roaches under light. And through it all, Naomi stood perfectly still, the badge gleaming in her hand, watching as the world rearranged itself around her. Then the final blow. Miguel the bellhop stepped forward again, this time with a hotel envelope. "For you, Ms. Carter," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "Complimentary suite upgrade. Permanent access." The applause started with Lydia Cho. By the time the cops escorted Evelyn out, it was thunderous. The senator's words landed like a gavel strike. A hush fell over the lobby, so complete that the rustle of Victoria's designer dress sounded like a scream. Naomi didn't move, didn't flinch, just met Morrison's gaze with the quiet certainty of someone who'd already won. Then came the twist no one expected. From the back of the crowd, a teenage intern, wide-eyed gripping a clipboard, suddenly blurted, "Oh my God, that's why the keynote slides had the TechFlow rebrand." She fumbled with her tablet, turning it to show the crowd. The screen displayed a sleek presentation deck, the title slide emblazoned with TechFlow 2.0 leadership, reimagined, and beneath it a photo of Naomi in the exact blazer she wore now. Victoria's mouth opened, but no sound came out. The senator smiled, slow and sharp. "Seems your new CEO beat you to the punch, Ms. Kensington." The room erupted. Reporters surged forward. The hotel manager lunged for the intern's tablet as if he could erase reality. But the final blow came from the most unexpected place. The elevator doors parted again, and out stepped a gray-haired man in a rumpled suit, his face plastered across every business magazine in America. Richard Langford, TechFlow's outgoing CEO. He didn't even glance at Victoria, just walked straight to Naomi and extended his hand. "Sorry I'm late, boss. Traffic was hell." The gasp from the crowd was almost comical. Richard turned to the stunned onlookers, his voice carrying decades of Silicon Valley clout. "For those who missed the memo, effective midnight last night, Ms. Carter owns 51% of TechFlow. That includes," he added pointedly, "your event's sponsorship contract." Naomi finally moved, plucking her business card from the senator's fingers. "Officers," she said, "I believe we're done here." But as Martinez nodded and turned to leave, Victoria lunged not at Naomi, but at the intern's tablet, knocking it to the marble floor with a crash. "This is a setup!" she shrieked, her perfect hair now wild around her face. "You can't just—" "Actually," Richard interrupted, pulling a folded document from his jacket. "We can." He flipped it open to reveal the notarized transfer of ownership, signed in bold black ink. The silence that followed was broken by the sound of Victoria's knees hitting the floor. Not in surrender, her Louboutins had finally betrayed her. As she scrambled up, the crowd parted like the Red Sea, phones still rolling, but now capturing her retreat instead of Naomi's humiliation. "And Naomi!" She adjusted her blazer, nodded to the senator, and strode toward the elevators, the sea of executives instinctively clearing a path. Just before the doors closed, she called back, "Oh, and Evelyn HR has your termination paperwork waiting. Feel free to use the service entrance on your way out." The doors slid shut on the sound of the lobby's applause. The platinum badge gleamed in Amara's hand, its holographic TechFlow logo catching the light like a challenge. The lobby, already tense, now crackled with electricity. Victoria took an involuntary step back, her designer heel catching on the marble, a tiny stumble, but enough. Then came the twist. A sharp ding echoed through the space as the hotel's massive LED screen flickered to life. The words, "Live from TechFlow." Main stage flashed in bold, followed by a close-up of Amara's face, the same face now staring calmly at Victoria. The screen split, showing the empty summit stage and the live feed of this very confrontation. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Someone in the control room had made a choice. Senator Morrison's lips twitched. "Seems your keynote started early, Ms. Davis." Victoria whirled toward the screen, then back to Amara, her composure fracturing. This is a stunt. You planned this?" Amara didn't blink. "No, Victoria. You planned this. The moment you put your hands on me, the moment you decided what a CEO should look like." She stepped forward, the badge now clipped to her blazer. "But let me show you what one does." With a single tap on her phone, the screen changed again. This time it displayed a sleek corporate video, TechFlow's new diversity initiative, featuring Amara at the helm. The tagline flashed, "Leadership has no dress code." The room erupted, not in whispers, but in something far more dangerous, the sound of a paradigm shifting. The executives who'd earlier stood with Victoria now melted into the crowd, their phones hastily pocketed. Even the hotel staff had stopped pretending not to watch, their expressions a mix of awe and vindication. But the final blow came from an unexpected corner. A young black woman in a hotel uniform, one of the service staff Victoria had sneered at earlier, stepped forward, her voice clear and steady. "Ms. Davis, your team's waiting upstairs. They said to tell you the real investors just arrived." She held out a tablet, the screen showing a video call with 3 silver-haired men in Zurich boardrooms, all standing in respect. Victoria made a choked noise. These weren't just investors. They were the legendary wolf pack of venture capital men who'd never so much as blinked at her family's fortune. Amara nodded her thanks, then turned to leave. As she passed Victoria, she paused just long enough to whisper, "The help entrance is that way. I'd hurry, your Uber rating's about to tank." The elevator doors closed on a lobby suddenly gloriously silent. Outside, the first news helicopters circled overhead. By noon, what CEOs look like would be global. By dinner, Victoria's company stock would plummet. And by midnight, Amara would be sitting in her penthouse suite reviewing the footage, not of her victory, but of the moment the world learned power doesn't come in a designer handbag. It comes in the unshakable calm of a woman who never needed to prove anything at all. The marble lobby had become a courtroom, and every witness held their breath. Victoria's manicured hands trembled at her sides, her designer blazer suddenly looking more like a straitjacket. The second business card, the one bearing the Sterling Marketing Group logo, lay on the concierge desk, like a smoking gun. Then came the twist that shattered the silence. From the back of the crowd, a voice called out, "Oh, this just went live." A junior associate held up her phone screen tilted toward the crowd. It showed Sterling Marketing's official LinkedIn page, updated 3 minutes ago with Amara's face, now smiling beside the words, "New majority owner and chairwoman." Below it, the first comment, "Welcome to the team," from Richard Sterling himself. Victoria made a sound like a wounded animal. This is illegal. There are procedures." "Actually," interrupted a wiry man in horn-rimmed glasses, who'd just emerged from the elevators, "it's textbook perfect." He adjusted his tie, addressing the crowd like a professor. "Delaware Shell Corporation, all filings proper, 72-hour disclosure window honored." He nodded to Amara. "I should know. I drafted the paperwork." Victoria's lawyer. The crowd erupted. Camera flashes exploded. Senator Morrison actually chuckled. But Amara simply reached into her portfolio one last time and produced a single sheet of paper. "Your severance agreement, Victoria. 6 months' salary, more than you gave Marguerite Chen when you fired her for not fitting the company culture." A gasp came from the crowd. A young Asian woman clapped a hand over her mouth. The former Sterling employee, Victoria, had ousted last quarter. Victoria lunged for the document, but Amara held it, just out of reach. "There's one condition." She nodded to the intern's phone, still broadcasting live. "You say her name. All their names. The people you stepped on to climb this ladder." The lobby became a confessional. Every camera focused on Victoria's trembling lips. Outside, news vans screeched to a halt. Somewhere, a Bloomberg terminal pinged with Sterling Marketing's nosediving stock price. And as the first tear streaked Victoria's perfect contouring, Amara did the cruelest thing imaginable. She handed her a tissue. "Welcome to the new corporate culture." The marble lobby had transformed into an execution chamber, and every spectator stood witness. Victoria's breath came in ragged gasps as the corporate matryoshka doll unfolded each layer, revealing Amara's invisible hand controlling everything. The scattered contents of Victoria's purse glinted under the chandeliers like evidence at a crime scene. Then came the twist that turned the knife. A sharp ping echoed through the space as every phone in the lobby buzzed simultaneously. The Bloomberg alert flashed on 100 screens. Stock shock. Sterling Marketing plummets 63% after majority owner Amara Davis initiates mass shareholder sell-off. Victoria's head snapped up. "You can't, that's market manipulation." "Actually," said the wiry lawyer, adjusting his glasses, "it's perfectly legal when you own 87% of the float." He tapped his phone. "My team just filed the 8K. Your stock options." A theatrical pause. "Worth less than your latte." The crowd erupted. Financial reporters who'd been covering the summit sprinted for the exits, already dictating breaking news alerts. Victoria's remaining allies melted away, one actually ripping his Sterling Marketing lapel pin off and tossing it in a potted plant. Amara crouched to eye level with the crumpled woman. "You were right about one thing earlier," she murmured just loud enough for nearby mics to catch. "This is about security." She plucked Victoria's keycard from the spilled purse. Building access revoked. The final humiliation came from an unexpected quarter. The hotel manager, sweating through his Armani shirt, scurried forward with a plastic bin. "Ms. Sterling, Ms. Kensington, we'll need your room key. The penthouse suite is being reassigned." As security escorted Victoria toward the service entrance, the irony wasn't lost on anyone. Amara turned to the remaining crowd. The live feed still broadcasted to the summit's main stage, where hundreds of attendees now stood applauding. "Now," she said, brushing invisible lint off her blazer, "shall we discuss real corporate diversity?" The elevator doors closed on a revolution. By midnight, Sterling Crash would trend globally. By dawn 6, Fortune 500 CEOs would announce sweeping policy changes. And Victoria, her Uber receipt would show a $347 surge price ride to her mother's condo, the only place left that wouldn't slam the door in her face. As for Amara, she finally checked her buzzing phone. One new message: the White House is calling. The lobby had become an operating theater, and Amara wielded her revelations like a scalpel. Every word stripped away another layer of Victoria's carefully constructed world. The hotel staff had stopped pretending to work their uniforms, blending into the sea of stunned faces. Even the chandeliers seemed to dim, as if the building itself was holding its breath. Then came the twist that sealed Victoria's fate. A sharp ding cut through the tension as the hotel's elevator doors slid open. Out stepped a silver-haired man in a rumpled suit, his face flushed with urgency. Richard Sterling himself, clutching a manila envelope. The crowd parted like the Red Sea as he marched straight to Amara. "I tried to stop you," he panted, thrusting the envelope at her. "The non-disclosure—" Amara didn't even glance at the papers. Null and void. Clause 12.7, material breach of ethics. She tilted her head toward the still rolling cameras. Very public breach. Richard's shoulders slumped. Behind him, a junior associate frantically scrolled through a tablet before gasping. "Mr. Sterling, the merger backout clause just triggered. The entire sale is reversible if the company's value drops more than 40% within 72 hours of acquisition." Amara finished smoothly. She tapped her phone, and the lobby's massive display screen lit up with Sterling Marketing's nose-diving stock chart. "Congratulations, Richard. You can have your sinking ship back." The room erupted. Reporters lunged forward. Richard Sterling made a sound like a deflating balloon. But the true masterpiece was Victoria's expression. The dawning horror as she realized Amara hadn't just bought her company to fire her. She'd bought it to give it back. Now bankrupt. Now radioactive. Now with a very public paper trail of discrimination settlements that would haunt any future employer. Senator Morrison whistled low. "That's not a pink slip. That's a life sentence." Amara finally pocketed her phone. "The best justice," she said, stepping over Victoria's scattered lipstick like it was debris on a battlefield, "is the kind they can't appeal." As she strode toward the elevators, the crowd broke into spontaneous applause, not for the billionaire, but for the woman who'd turned an entire industry's dirty laundry into a masterclass in accountability. The doors closed on Victoria's shattered career, Richard's frantic negotiations, and one final twist. Amara's quiet smile as she canceled Pacific Northwest Airlines charter flights, stranding 17 very important executives in a hotel that no longer wanted them. The air in the lobby grew thick with anticipation, every eye locked on Amara as she weighed Victoria's fate. The once polished marble floor was now littered with the remnants of Victoria's pride, scattered makeup, a broken heel, and the shattered illusion of her invincibility. Then came the twist that left the crowd breathless. Amara turned to Officer Martinez, her voice measured. "I won't be pressing criminal charges." A collective gasp rippled through the room. Victoria's head snapped up, a flicker of desperate hope in her eyes, until Amara continued. "Because real justice isn't about punishment. It's about prevention." She tapped her phone, and the lobby screens lit up with a live press conference from Sterling Marketing's headquarters. The newly appointed interim CEO, Marguerite Chen, the very employee Victoria had fired months prior, stood at the podium. Effective immediately, Marguerite announced, "We're implementing mandatory bias training, doubling diversity hiring goals, and establishing an anonymous ethics hotline." The camera panned to show the entire leadership team behind her, young, diverse, and unmistakably triumphant. Victoria made a choked noise. You promoted them." "No," Amara corrected. "I empowered them." She nodded to the screen where Marguerite was now unveiling a plaque in the lobby, in memory of every voice silenced here. May this building finally hear them. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. Senator Morrison stepped forward, her voice carrying the weight of history. That's not a termination. That's a legacy. As if on cue, the hotel's grand piano in the corner began to play a soulful rendition of "A Change Is Gonna Come." The pianist, a black musician who'd performed at this hotel for years unnoticed, didn't glance up from the keys. But the message was clear. The background players were taking center stage. Amara finally approached Victoria, extending not a pink slip, but a single sheet of paper. Your severance includes 6 months' salary on one condition. She pointed to a clause at the bottom. You complete 200 hours of community service with the Urban Business Initiative coaching minority entrepreneurs. Victoria's hands shook as she stared at the document. You want me to help them? No, Amara said softly. I want you to learn from them. The elevator doors opened with a chime. 2 security guards waited not to escort Victoria out, but to hand her a visitor's badge. The kind she'd once sneered at. The kind that read "temporary access" in bold letters. As the crowd erupted in applause, Amara turned toward the summit's main stage. The real work was just beginning. And somewhere in the chaos, a single camera caught the moment Victoria Kensington, former queen of the corporate jungle, stepped into the service elevator. Her reflection in the polished brass doors, showing not a villain, but a woman who'd finally met the future, and found it nothing like she'd imagined. The applause swelled like a rising tide, filling the cavernous lobby, until even the chandeliers seemed to tremble with its force. Victoria's tears cut tracks through her perfectly contoured makeup, dripping onto the manila envelope that held both her ruin and her redemption. Then came the twist no one anticipated. A child's voice rang out from near the elevators. Mommy! Every head turned. A little girl, no more than 6, her cornrows adorned with yellow ribbons, stood clutching the hand of a stunned hotel employee. Her eyes locked onto Victoria with heartbreaking recognition. The room froze. Victoria's breath hitched. Sophie, how? Your nanny called the front desk, the employee stammered. She said your daughter insisted on seeing where Mommy worked. The envelope slipped from Victoria's fingers. In that moment, the corporate shark became just a mother, one whose little girl had just witnessed her entire world collapse. Sophie tugged free and ran forward, her tiny dress swirling around her knees. She didn't go to Victoria. She went to Amara. Are you the lady who fixes bullies? Sophie asked loud enough for every microphone to catch. My teacher says bullies need help being nice. The lobby collectively stopped breathing. Amara knelt, bringing herself eye level with the child. Sometimes, she said gently, bullies just need someone to show them how. Victoria made a sound like a wounded animal. Sophie turned finally, seeing her mother's tear-streaked face. Mommy, why are you sad? The question hung in the air, heavier than any legal indictment. Amara stood retrieving the fallen envelope. When she pressed it into Victoria's hands this time, she added something else, a photograph from her wallet. A faded Polaroid of a black girl in pigtails, standing before a whites-only water fountain. My grandmother, Amara said quietly. The reason I buy companies instead of lawsuits. Victoria's fingers trembled against the photo. When she looked up, her daughter was watching her, waiting, learning. The cameras kept rolling, but the story had changed. This wasn't about vengeance anymore. It was about legacy. As Sophie reached for her mother's hand, the piano music shifted, the opening bars of "This Little Light of Mine," filling the space where words failed. And in that moment, even the hardest hearts in the room understood. The most powerful revolutions don't happen in courtrooms or boardrooms. They happen in the quiet moments when the next generation chooses to do better. The elevator doors closed on Victoria, hugging her daughter tight, the unopened severance package, and its second chance still clutched in her hand. Outside, the first reporters were already broadcasting the headline that would dominate the news cycle for weeks. Not just a reckoning, a beginning. The conference room hummed with tension, the city skyline outside serving as a glittering backdrop to corporate reckoning. Amara let the data linger on screen, the glowing web of connections pulsing like veins under a microscope, before delivering the twist that rewrote the room's understanding of power. She tapped her keyboard. The diagram exploded into motion, revealing hidden nodes, red dots marking every executive in attendance whose firms had pending discrimination lawsuits. Funny thing about data, Amara mused, watching the color drain from three particular faces. It connects what people try so hard to keep separate. A choked gasp came from the CFO of Nexus Corp. His company's 12mm gender pay settlement floated beside his headshot. The VP from Brighton Holdings actually crossed himself when footage played of him laughing at Victoria's service entrance comment earlier. Then came the masterstroke. Amara opened a secure folder. These aren't leaks. They're shareholder reports from your own general counsels. She nodded to Senator Morrison, who produced a thick binder stamped congressional record. And these proposed legislation mandating diversity disclosures for all publicly traded companies. The room swayed like a ship hitting storm waves. Victoria finally looked up, her voice raw. You're not just reforming Sterling. You're rebuilding the whole damn system. Correction. Amara clicked to the final slide, a live feed of the hotel lobby below, where Marguerite Chen was now addressing a press pool. Marguerite's team is handling Sterling. I'm here for the rest of you. The screen split to show real-time stock tickers. As they watched, Nexus Corp's shares dropped 8%, then 12%, then 18% each plunge, synchronized with Marguerite announcing another corporate partnership with Sterling's new ethics initiative. Marcus Thompson's pen hovered over his notebook. This isn't a summit. It's an intervention. Amara smiled for the first time since entering the room. Call it what you want, but every one of you has a choice. She tapped her watch, and the boardroom doors opened. Uniformed staff wheeled in champagne carts and document carts. Option A, sign the diversity accords, implement verified reforms, and join the largest corporate equity initiative in history. The champagne corks popped. Option B. Amara nodded to the windows where news helicopters now circled like vultures. Explain to your shareholders why you chose extinction. As the first executive reached for a pen, Victoria did something unexpected. She walked to Amara's end of the table, and picked up a champagne flute. To new beginnings. She said, her voice steadier than it had been all morning. The toast echoed through the room, through the building. Through the live stream, Marguerite had just restarted a seismic shift in corporate America, bottled in a single crystal glass. And outside, the city glittered on, oblivious that the rules of power had just been rewritten. The silence in the boardroom was so absolute, they could hear the ice melting in the champagne buckets. James Harrison's knuckles whitened around his pen as he stared at the projected terms, not just corporate policy, but an entire ecosystem rewriting its DNA. Then came the twist that turned compliance into crusade. Amara tapped her tablet. The screen split to show two live feeds, one of Marguerite Chen announcing Sterling's new open-door scholarship program for minority marketers, the other of a packed press conference at City Hall. The mayor stood flanked by activists unveiling legislation that would give tax breaks to companies meeting TechFlow's equity standards. Harrison's protest died in his throat. Timing, Amara said mildly, is everything. She nodded to Senator Morrison, who produced a second binder, this one stamped with the White House seal. The federal contractor diversity mandate gets voted on Thursday. Guess which 27 companies in this room stand to lose $9 billion in government contracts? A VP from Brighton Holdings actually whimpered, but the real masterstroke came next. Amara opened a seemingly innocuous spreadsheet until executives recognized their own corporate jet tail numbers. Funny story. Pacific Northwest Airlines. We've been quietly upgrading its emission systems. She zoomed in on a fuel efficiency report. Turns out ethical business is literally cleaner. The room vibrated with silent calculations, not just of risk, but of opportunity. Dr. Wong was the first to move, scrawling her signature across the accord with a flourish that sent her diamond bracelet clinking. My grandmother, she said pointedly, would have slapped me for taking this long. One by one, pens hit paper. Harrison signed last, his jaw tight, until Amara slid a separate document his way. Your logistics firm's electric truck division. We're prepared to triple its funding. Conditional on diverse hiring, of course. The champagne tasted different, now. Less surrender, more celebration. Even Victoria raised her glass, her red-rimmed eyes meeting Amara's across the table. "You could have crushed us," she said quietly. Amara tilted her head. "Crushing you wouldn't have changed anything." Outside, the news helicopters were landing, their cameras now trained on something far more revolutionary than a scandal. A room full of powerful people volunteering to dismantle systemic bias, because the math finally made sense. As the signed accords piled up, Marcus Thompson's phone buzzed with an alert, his publisher offering 7 figures for the book rights. He declined with one sentence. "Can't spoil the sequel." And high above the city, the TechFlow logo on the screen shimmered and transformed into something new. An open door, endless possibilities streaming through. The timeline on the screen pulsed like a heartbeat, each phase glowing brighter as Amara spoke. The air in the room had shifted. This wasn't just a presentation anymore, but the unveiling of a meticulously constructed revolution. Then came the twist that turned corporate strategy into personal reckoning. Amara tapped her tablet. The screen changed to show 3 live video feeds. Maria Rodriguez presenting at a Berlin Tech Summit, Kim Patel accepting an industry award, Sarah Chen testifying before Congress about cybersecurity. All 3 women wore the same distinctive lapel pin, a tiny, defiant TechFlow logo. "They never really left," Amara said softly. "They've been building this with me." The gasp from James Harrison was almost comical. "You mean this whole time? Your phase 0. Amara confirmed, zooming in on Sarah Chen's congressional badge, Special Advisor TechFlow Equity Initiative. "While you were counting quarterly profits, we were auditing your corporate cultures." Dr. Wong's champagne flute hit the table with a clink. "The algorithm Kim developed, it wasn't just for fraud detection, was it?" Amara's smile was all the answer needed. The screen split again, this time showing an AI dashboard flagging problematic language in corporate emails, skewed hiring metrics, even tone patterns in meeting transcripts. Victoria made a strangled noise. "You've been spying on us." "Reading public court records," Amara corrected. "Analyzing your own published diversity reports. Tracking patterns in employee reviews on Glassdoor." She zoomed in on a particularly damning cluster of data points. "Your CFO's habit of scheduling golf meetings with only male junior executives was particularly illuminating." The room erupted, not in protest, but in something far more dangerous realization. Every executive present was mentally reviewing every email, every meeting, every offhand comment that might now live in TechFlow's servers. Senator Morrison stood, her binder snapping shut like a gavel. "I believe we've reached the voting portion of our agenda." Pens moved faster now. Harrison signed so hard his signature tore the paper. As the last accord slid across the table, Amara tapped one final command. The windows of the 42nd floor conference room, specially designed smart glass, transformed into transparent screens. Across the city skyline, building after building lit up with the TechFlow Equity Protocol logo, their facades glowing like beacons in the gathering dusk. Maria, Kim, and Sarah appeared on the main screen again, this time live from 3 different time zones. "Welcome," they said in unison, "to the future of business." And outside, the helicopter circling overhead captured the perfect money shot. A boardroom of powerful executives, their faces lit by the citywide glow of systemic change, finally understanding. The revolution wouldn't be televised. It would be corporately mandated, algorithmically enforced, and very, very profitable. The conference room lights dimmed slightly, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Victoria's confession hung in the air, raw, unpolished, the first honest words she'd spoken in years. The executives who'd been ready to crucify her an hour ago now shifted uncomfortably in their seats, recognizing shades of their own moral compromises. Then came the twist that redefined redemption. Amara reached into her briefcase and produced a small velvet box. When she opened it, the contents made Dr. Wong gasp, a tarnished silver nameplate reading Estelle Kensington, Head Secretary, 1965-1998. My grandmother kept this after your grandmother fired her for attitude problems, Amara said, placing it gently before Victoria, which was code for refusing to serve coffee to executives who called her girl. Victoria's hands trembled as she touched the relic. The room's screens flickered to life again, this time showing security footage from earlier that morning. Victoria shoving past a black maid in the hallway without apology, the same dismissive cruelty she'd shown Amara. Here's what's going to happen. Amara continued, her voice firm, but not unkind. You'll spend your 6-month severance working entry-level at every department in Sterling mailroom IT custodial. You'll experience what happens when someone like you treats someone like you the way you've treated others. A murmur rippled through the room. Harrison opened his mouth to protest, but Senator Morrison cut him off. Brilliant. Let her learn what her policies actually meant for real people. Victoria's shoulders slumped, not in defeat, but relief. And after, Amara slid a business card across the table. TechFlow Equity Initiative Executive Rehabilitation Program. If you complete the program, you get to help design the training that prevents the next Victoria. She paused. Your choice. The silence stretched as Victoria stared at the card. Outside, the city lights twinkled like stars, the TechFlow logo still glowing from skyscrapers across downtown. Then, the softest sound in the world, a pen clicking. Victoria signed her severance agreement, then reached for the equity accord, adding her name below the others. When she looked up, her tear-streaked face held something new purpose. Amara nodded to Marcus. His live stream resumed with a single caption. Day 1. And as the meeting adjourned, no one noticed the young intern in the corner, the one who'd brought Sophie upstairs, quietly removing a diversity hire pin from her lanyard. Because tomorrow it would just say hire. The revolution, it seemed, had room for everyone. The tablet screen flickered, revealing 2 doors, one labeled Return to Sterling Entry Level, the other TechFlow Equity Initiative Trainer. The executives leaned in, their designer shoes scuffing the plush carpet. This wasn't just Victoria's choice. It was a litmus test for the entire room. Then came the twist that shattered expectations. A notification pinged on the conference room's main screen, a live feed from Sterling's headquarters. Marguerite Chen stood flanked by the very employees Victoria had sidelined for years, the black IT specialist she'd called too urban for client meetings, the Latina analyst she'd accused of emotional outbursts, the wheelchair-using marketer she'd excluded from important golf outings. Meet your rehabilitation committee, Amara said, as Marguerite held up a signed offer letter. They'll evaluate your progress. Unanimous approval required. Victoria's breath hitched. The IT specialist, now Sterling's CTO, smiled grimly at the camera. We don't want apologies, Victoria. We want change. The room vibrated with the unspoken understanding. This wasn't about saving Victoria's career. It was about proving the system could redeem its worst offenders. Senator Morrison broke the silence. And if she fails, Amara tapped her watch. The skyscraper lights outside shifted from the TechFlow logo to a real-time counter. $847,000 quarterly revenue generated by reformed executives. The market decides, Amara said simply. Victoria reached for the tablet, her manicured finger hovering between the doors. Then, click. The room erupted as the screen split, showing both doors swinging open simultaneously. Marguerite's team applauded on one side. Dr. Martinez's trainees cheered on the other. But the real surprise came from the intern's laptop in the corner, where Sophie's face appeared via video call from the hotel daycare. Mommy, she whispered, holding up a crayon drawing of 2 stick figures, one tall, one small, holding hands under a rainbow. Victoria's composure shattered. When she finally spoke, her voice carried across the live streams, the boardrooms, the history books being written in real time. I choose both. Amara nodded to Marcus. His camera captured the perfect closing shot, a disgraced executive and a revolutionary CEO, shaking hands not as predator and prey, but as proof that even the most broken systems could heal. And outside, the city lights blazed brighter than ever, spelling out the lesson every corporation would soon learn. Redemption. It turned out, was the ultimate growth industry. The slide dissolved into a live video feed. 3 former problem executives, now leading diversity initiatives at their companies. A blonde woman in a tech firm's hoodie spoke directly to the camera. "I used to roll my eyes at sensitivity training. Now I understand it's not about political correctness. It's about not being an asshole." Laughter rippled through the room, breaking the remaining tension. Then came the twist that turned redemption into revolution. Amara tapped her watch. Every attendee's phone buzzed simultaneously, with a calendar invite: mandatory leadership retreat. Boot Camp Edition. The location, a rustic lodge in Montana, with one special feature. "Your first exercise starts now," Amara announced as the conference room doors swung open. In walked the same service staff Victoria had ignored for years: housekeepers, bellhops, cafeteria workers now wearing facilitator badges. "Meet your teachers," Amara said. The young black maid Victoria had shoved aside earlier stepped forward, holding a stack of employee manuals. "We'll be using these," she said, flipping open to reveal handwritten notes in the margins, decades of ignored complaints and suggestions. Victoria stood so fast her chair toppled. For a heartbeat, the room feared another outburst. Then, she took the manual with both hands like receiving a sacred text. "I should have read these years ago." The hotel manager, watching from the corner, suddenly found his own name in a margin note. His face went pale. Amara let the moment linger before delivering her final blow. "Oh, and about those Montana cabins." She flashed a photo of the rustic retreat, now showing a gleaming corporate campus under construction. "TechFlow just bought the entire valley. Every company that completes the program gets equity shares in the next phase." The room erupted. Executives scrambled to sign the digital accord before their competitors. Dr. Wong actually hugged Senator Morrison. Even Harrison was nodding along, as the former maid explained how housekeeping rotations taught teamwork better than any corporate retreat. But the true masterpiece was unfolding on the livestream comments. "Is this what ethical capitalism looks like? My company needs this yesterday. Just got teary-eyed at a corporate meeting." As the chaos swirled, Amara slipped out, unnoticed, her work done. The elevator doors closed on a scene that would redefine American business. Victoria Kensington, once the villain of this story, sitting cross-legged on the floor with a janitor and a Fortune 500 CEO, comparing notes on how to build a better world. And outside the city hummed along, oblivious that the rules had just changed. Again. The applause thundered through the conference hall as Victoria stepped away from the podium, not to exit, but to make way for 3 unexpected guests. The screens lit up with a live feed from 3 continents. Maria Rodriguez in Berlin, now heading TechFlow's European Equity Division, announcing Germany's first corporate rehabilitation center. Kim Patel in Mumbai, unveiling an AI tool that tracks inclusion metrics in real time across global teams. And Sarah Chen in Lagos, standing beside the very janitor who'd once cleaned Victoria's office, now co-directing Africa's inaugural Inclusive Leadership Academy. The message was unmistakable. The revolution had gone viral. Then came the twist that turned inspiration into action. A hush fell as the screens split again, this time showing live footage from Sterling Marketing's mailroom, where a young black intern was unpacking boxes marked legacy files. She pulled out a dusty folder labeled Kensington Complaints, 1968, and opened it to reveal Amara's grandmother's handwritten discrimination complaint against Victoria's grandmother. The symmetry was devastating. Victoria didn't flinch. Instead, she walked to the edge of the stage and extended a hand toward the live feed. "Miss Williams." The intern looked up, startled. "How would you like to help me build Phase 2? The room erupted. Executives stood, not just applauding, but reaching for their phones, calling HR emailing boards, texting "We need this yesterday" to their leadership teams. But the true masterstroke came when the screens changed one final time, displaying a single sentence. TechFlow releases all equity patents and protocols open source today. Amara took the mic as chaos erupted. No more gatekeeping, no more competitive advantage. She waited for the noise to subside. Because true inclusion doesn't have shareholders. It has stakeholders. All of us. As the crowd surged forward, former skeptics now clamoring to join the movement, Victoria found Amara in the chaos. No words were needed. The elevator doors from that fateful morning now hung as art in the lobby, their security footage playing on loop beneath a new plaque. Here began the reckoning. Where will you begin yours? And in the quiet eye of the storm, Amara finally checked her buzzing phone. One new message. The president wants your program at the Pentagon. Change, it seemed, was just getting started.